I wanted to go over the first quiz that we just had in psychosocial aspects of sport. I just wanted to go over a couple of the more frequently missed questions, as well as a couple of the questions I just thought were cool. So, in your grade center, when you're looking at your grade for the quiz, I put feedback in individual questions. So, you have feedback from me. If you missed points, there will always be feedback from me. So, I want you to make sure that you're not missing that. I would never just take points and not give you an explanation. So please look at that on your own quizzes in your grade center. But I also wanted to go over this as a whole. So I'm going to do the best I can in a screencast. So let's look at this first question. It's asking you to compare and contrast two different definitions of sports. So we have kind of a classic definition, Ibrahim's definition of sport, which gives us three kind of necessary conditions for sport. And those are expression, competition, and arbitration. Those were in that article that I had posted in week 1. However, a lot of you missed the necessary conditions of sport for Title IX. So I wanted to go over those with you. I feel like that's important. So in week 1, we had a PowerPoint. I'm going to pull this up. In week 1, we had a PowerPoint that looked at some of these definitions of sport. So this is in that PowerPoint in week 1. You can go back and look. So if, let's say, a case is in court that is deciding if a sport complies with Title IX or not, how would the court define sport in a Title IX context? So there is a link here with an article that talks about the definition of sport in a Title IX context. So let's look at that. That's right here. That takes you to that link, takes you to this article. So come on, let my screen populate this article here. Okay, so here we go. Is competitive cheer a sport? And so this is that article that's in your week 1 content, in your PowerPoint in your week 1 content. And this article discusses some necessary qualifications for a sport to be recognized as a sport. So, it talks about a particular lawsuit that's at Quinnipiac University, and that's whether cheerleading, their cheerleading program is a sport or not. So, some things that a court would look at is whether or not the activity has competitions, has a governing body, has coaches, and has scheduled practices. So you can see, compare it with cheerleading programs. In some instances, cheerleading is a sport because it has those things. It's judged and it's a competition. It's got a coach. It's got a governing body, which is UCA, I think, United U.S. Cheer Association or whatever it's called. And they have scheduled practices. In other cases, cheerleading doesn't have these things. So in that case, a school can't use cheerleading to comply with Title IX requirements. So I wanted you to compare and contrast those things with Ibrahim's kind of classic definition of sport and the Title IX conditions of sport, which were that it was competitive, had a governing organization, had coaches, and had scheduled practices. So let's move on to, what is my next question here? Let's move on to number 3. So number 3 asked you to look at how many students that play high school sports go on to play college sports. And most of you got that one. Most of you found the probability of competing in college sports link through the NCAA, and I think that's a really interesting article. But a lot of you had trouble finding this one. So we want to look at what part B and number 3 is asking for is, what's the percentage of students at Euler that are varsity athletes? So this link takes you to the NCAA cutting tool. That's just a kind of a clearinghouse for NCAA data. It's a U.S. Department of Education site. So we're going to go through this. We're going to get data for one school. And so here you enter in Euler, Little Rock, and then you search it. And so you can see, we found Euler. Good deal. And then what it's going to do is pull up all of this data, this current data about Euler athletics. So this is really kind of a cool tool to look up NCAA statistics based on various institutions. So we scroll down and we see total participants in men's and women's teams, 113 in men's, 144 in women's. Or you could have looked at the unduplicated count of participants. So that's not double counting. So like track, indoor track and cross country, those are all different sports. So we don't want to double count track and cross country. It's two different sports. But if we only count those athletes as once, that's why we have two different numbers here. So either way you look at it, let's just take the total participants. If you added up this 113 and 144 student athletes, and then you went up and you divided by the total number of undergrad students, which is this 4,424 right here, then you get 5.8%. So think about that, 5.8%, less than 6% of undergrad students at Euler are varsity athletes. So what do you think about the DSC as being the primary sport facility for 94% of the students at Euler? Is that okay? Is it okay that the Stevens Center is only ever gets to be used by 6% of the students at Euler? So I wanted you to just kind of chew on that percentage, that 6% of students that are athletes and the 94% of students who aren't, and chew on how important it is. Think about how important it is for Euler to provide sports and recreation opportunities and facilities for that other 94% of students. And I wanted you to give me some kind of thoughts on that. So that's what I was looking for. I was disappointed to see that a lot of you just skipped that. I don't know why you did that, but anyway, that's where this information was. So another question I wanted to look at that I thought was cool, and I enjoyed reading your different answers on this one. Let's look at this number 5, this Coakley question. So you had a reading in week 3. This week, week 3, last week, we looked at sports and politics. So this Coakley reading looked at some reasons why providing sports through the government is in a community's best interest and in the government's best interest. So let's pull this up. So I'm pulling up this Coakley article, and here it is. It's right at the beginning of this article. It's on page 2. So here are those 8 things: to safeguard the public order, ensure fairness and protect human rights, maintain health and fitness among citizens. And one of the best answers that I read was somebody chose safeguarding the public order. And the example in our community that they chose for safeguarding the public order was looking at a midnight basketball league, for example. And the purpose of that midnight basketball league would be to basically take people off the streets, give them something positive to do in a safe place so that they're not, out in the street where bad things may happen late at night. So give people a safe place to go and a healthy activity to do so they're not in the streets late at night where bad things might happen. So that was a really good answer and an example of the kind of answer I was looking for in number 5. So thank you for your quiz. Everybody got it in on time. I was excited about that. I did want to go over some of these more frequently missed answers with you so I can show you where I got that information and what I was looking for. I will be communicating with you more about this week's stuff, and I hope you guys have a good week. I'll talk to you soon.